I never thought a simple birthday dinner would turn into the most humiliating night of my life. There I was, driving back to Sacramento after 6 months in Portland, excited to celebrate my sister Sarah turning 24 at her favorite Italian restaurant. I had made reservations at the nicest place in town, even paid the deposit up front, because I wanted this to be special. My parents always had their particular ways of handling family gatherings, and I should have seen the warning signs when Mom mentioned they had something important to discuss. But honestly, I was just happy to be home, ready to spoil my little sister and enjoy some quality family time. Little did I know this dinner would change everything between us forever. Before we dive into this story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. If you have ever been put in an impossible situation by your own family, hit that like button right now. And make sure to subscribe because trust me, you will want to hear how this family dinner turned into my worst nightmare and how I finally found the courage to stand up for myself. Let me give you some background about my family dynamic. My name is Hope. I am 28 years old, and I work as a software engineer up in Portland. I have been living independently since I turned 22, building my career from the ground up. My parents, Marcus and Diana, still live in the same Sacramento house where I grew up. Dad is 55 and had to retire early from construction work after injuring his back 3 years ago. Mom is 52 and works part-time at a local retail store, mostly to stay busy since her hours got cut during the pandemic. My sister Sarah is the baby of the family at 24. She is finishing her final year studying psychology at UC Davis and just landed this incredible internship opportunity in the Bay Area. Sarah has always been the responsible one, keeping her grades up and staying out of trouble, while I was the one pushing boundaries and fighting for independence. Here's the thing about my parents that I probably should have paid more attention to over the years. They developed this pattern of reaching out whenever they faced what they called emergencies. A broken appliance here, an unexpected bill there, car trouble that seemed to happen every few months. Nothing ever felt completely unreasonable on its own, but looking back, there was always something they needed help with financially. When I booked dinner at Romano's Italian Bistro, I specifically chose this upscale place because Sarah had mentioned loving their seafood pasta. The restaurant sits in downtown Sacramento with white tablecloths, dim lighting, and the kind of atmosphere where you dress up a little. I wanted this celebration to feel special because Sarah had worked so hard for this internship, and honestly, I was proud to show my family that I could afford to treat them somewhere nice. The evening started perfectly. We were seated at a corner table with a view of the fountain outside. Sarah looked radiant, talking about her upcoming internship, how she would be working with actual patients under supervision, and her dreams of eventually opening her own practice. Dad seemed genuinely proud, asking detailed questions about her program. Mom kept taking pictures of all of us together, saying how handsome I looked in my button-down shirt and how grown-up Sarah appeared. I remember feeling this warm satisfaction watching my family happy together. This was exactly what I had imagined during my drive down from Portland. Good food, genuine conversation, and that sense of closeness that sometimes gets lost when everyone is busy with their own lives. I even made a point of telling our server that I would be covering the entire check, wanting to take care of my family properly. But then, right as we were finishing our appetizers, Dad cleared his throat in that particular way he does when he has something serious to say. "Hope, son, since we have you here tonight, there is actually something your mother and I need to discuss with you." The way he said it, casual but with an undertone of expectation, immediately made me tense up. Mom jumped in before I could respond. "Your father's truck started making that grinding noise again. You know how these older vehicles are. The mechanic says it needs major work, something with the transmission. $800 to fix it properly." I felt my stomach drop. Not because $800 would bankrupt me, but because of the timing and the way they presented it. We were in the middle of celebrating Sarah's achievements, surrounded by other families enjoying their own special evenings, and suddenly, this felt like an ambush. I took a sip of water, trying to process what was happening. "That is a lot of money, Dad. I just bought a new laptop for work last month, and I have some planned expenses coming up." I was being honest. Between my rent savings goals and some equipment I needed for a project, $800 would definitely impact my budget. The moment I did not immediately agree, I noticed a shift. Dad's expression changed from hopeful to disappointed. Mom stopped smiling and exchanged a look with Dad that I recognized from childhood. That silent communication between parents when they are not getting the response they expected. The silence stretched uncomfortably. Sarah, always sensitive to family tension, tried to fill the gap by asking about the truck's history and whether Dad had gotten a second opinion. But I could feel something had fundamentally changed in the atmosphere at our table. The celebration suddenly felt secondary to this financial request that I had not seen coming. What happened next still makes my blood pressure rise when I think about it. After our main courses arrived, Dad suddenly pushed back his chair and stood up. Not to use the restroom or speak to the server, but to address our entire section of the restaurant. "I need to say something to everyone here," he announced, his voice carrying across multiple tables. Other diners looked up from their conversations, clearly startled by this interruption. "My son here makes good money working in tech up in Portland, lives in a fancy apartment, drives a nice car." I felt my face burning with embarrassment. "Dad, please sit down. People are trying to enjoy their dinner." But he was just getting started, and Mom was nodding along like this was a perfectly normal thing to do. But when his own family needs help, when the people who raised him and sacrificed everything for his education need $800 for basic transportation, suddenly he is too good for us. His voice was getting louder, and I could see servers stopping their work to watch our table. Mom decided to join the performance. $800 is nothing for someone with his salary, but he will not help his own parents. We taught him better than this, or at least we thought we did. She was using that wounded tone that had guilt-tripped me throughout childhood, except now she was broadcasting it to complete strangers. Sarah was mortified. "Mom? Dad, please. People are staring. This is not the place for this conversation." She was right. Families at nearby tables were openly watching us now, some looking concerned, others appearing annoyed that their own meals were being disrupted. I tried to take control of the situation. "We can discuss this at home. This is Sarah's celebration dinner." But my parents were on a roll, feeding off each other's energy and the attention they were getting. That is when Dad dropped the real bombshell. "We already told Jimmy at the garage that you would pay for the repairs. We have been bragging to the neighbors about our successful son who takes care of his family. What are we supposed to tell them now?" The full picture suddenly became clear. This was not a request for help. This was them informing me that they had already made commitments using my name and financial reputation. They had promised payment on my behalf without asking me first, then brought me to a public place where they could use shame and social pressure to force my compliance. "You promised the mechanic I would pay for something without asking me first." I could hear my voice getting tight with anger. "You told people I agreed to something I never agreed to." Mom went into full victim mode. "Families should stick together, Hope. After everything we have done for you, all the sacrifices we made when you were growing up, this is how you repay us, by embarrassing us in front of strangers." But Dad was not done. He looked around at the other tables, making sure he had their attention. "We raised this boy from nothing, worked 2 jobs to pay for his education, went without things ourselves so he could have opportunities. And now that he is successful, he acts like he does not know where he came from." The restaurant manager, a well-dressed woman in her 40s, approached our table with obvious concern. "Is everything all right here? We are getting some complaints about the noise level." Instead of apologizing or sitting down, Dad turned to her like she was another audience member. "Just family business, ma'am. Our son here seems to have forgotten where he came from. Sometimes you have to remind them in public since they will not listen in private." I wanted to disappear into the floor. Other families were watching this spectacle unfold, some whispering among themselves, others looking away in second-hand embarrassment. Sarah had tears in her eyes, not from sadness, but from the shame of being associated with this scene. Mom started her fake crying routine. "We are just so disappointed. We thought we raised him with better values. Family is supposed to come first, but apparently money is more important to him now. As I sat there being publicly humiliated by my own parents, pieces started falling into place. This was not the first time they had used my name to make financial commitments. I remembered hearing from relatives about how Mom had mentioned I might help with Cousin Jake's car repairs, or how Dad had told his poker buddies that I was planning to help them with their vacation fund. I had dismissed these comments as harmless bragging, but now I realized they had been systematically using my reputation and income as their personal credit line. This dinner was not about celebrating Sarah or spending quality family time. This was a calculated move to put me in a position where refusing would make me look like a terrible son in front of witnesses. They had chosen this public venue specifically because they knew I would be less likely to say no with all these people watching. Sarah finally found her voice through her tears. "This is not right. You should not be doing this to him, especially not here." Her support meant everything, but it also confirmed that even she could see how wrong this situation had become. The worst part was realizing that my parents viewed this as perfectly acceptable behavior. In their minds, having children meant having permanent financial support whenever they needed it, and using public shame to enforce that support was just practical parenting. That is when I reached my absolute breaking point. Dad, emboldened by what he probably thought was moral authority, leaned forward and said, "You think you are better than us now, do not you? Got your fancy job and your city apartment, and suddenly we are not good enough anymore." But Mom delivered the real gut punch. "We are not asking for charity here. We are just asking our son to do what any decent child would do for their parents. Is that really too much to expect?" Something inside me snapped. $800 that you already spent in my name, is that what this is really about? My voice was rising now, matching their energy, and I did not care anymore about the other diners watching us. Dad realized he had pushed too far, but instead of backing down, he doubled down. "Fine, you want the whole truth." We already had the transmission work done. Jimmy needed payment up front, so we told him our son would cover it. And while we are being honest, there is also the credit card bill from last month's emergency expenses. Another $1,500 that we figured you could handle since you are doing so well. The restaurant went completely silent. Even the servers had stopped moving. My parents had just admitted in front of dozens of witnesses that they had committed me to paying for over $2,000 in expenses without my knowledge or consent. Sarah gasped audibly. "You already spent the money you have been telling people. Hope agreed to things he never agreed to." Even she had not realized the full extent of what they had been doing. I stood up slowly, feeling every eye in the restaurant on me. My hands were shaking not from fear, but from pure fury at being manipulated so blatantly. "Everyone," I said loud enough for the entire dining room to hear me clearly, "I want you all to hear this." My parents looked shocked. They had expected their public shaming to work to pressure me into quietly agreeing and writing them a check. They had not planned for me to fight back just as publicly. These people did raise me. I continued looking around the restaurant at all the faces watching our family drama unfold. I do love them. That part is absolutely true. But what they are not telling you is that this is not the first time they have made financial commitments using my name without asking me. Mom tried to interrupt. "Hope, please, you are embarrassing us." But I was far beyond caring about their embarrassment at this point. What they are not telling you is that I have helped them financially many times over the years. Car repairs, medical bills, home maintenance, unexpected expenses. I have never once said no to a legitimate emergency. But using my name to get credit, then ambushing me in public to force payment that is not asking for help. That is manipulation. The restaurant was absolutely silent now. Other diners were listening to every word, and I could see some of them nodding in understanding. A few people actually looked sympathetic to my situation rather than judgmental. What they are not telling you is that promising someone else I will pay for their services without asking me first is essentially fraud. And embarrassing me publicly to extort money is emotional manipulation. I am 28 years old. I work hard for my money and I do not owe anyone my entire paycheck for the rest of my life, not even family." Dad's face was bright red. "How dare you disrespect us like this in front of all these people? We are your parents." But I was done being intimidated. "And I am your son, not your personal ATM. There is a difference between helping family and being financially exploited by family." Mom was crying real tears now, not the fake ones from before. "Our own son is turning against us, after everything we sacrificed." "I am not turning against you," I said firmly. "I am setting boundaries that should have been set years ago. You can ask me for help, but you cannot commit me to expenses without my knowledge. You can request financial assistance, but you cannot shame me publicly to get it." Sarah stood up beside me. "He is right, and you both know it. This is wrong, and it has been wrong for a long time." I called the restaurant manager over. "Ma'am, I sincerely apologize for the disruption to your establishment and your other guests." I pulled out my credit card. "I will pay for our entire meal as originally planned, plus a generous tip for our server who had to witness this scene." Then I turned back to my parents. "I am paying for tonight because I promised Sarah I would take care of dinner for her birthday celebration. But this is the last time you manipulate me with guilt and public humiliation." Mom was pleading now. "But what about the truck? What about the credit card? We told people you would handle it." "You made those commitments without asking me," I replied calmly. "You will have to figure out how to honor them yourselves like adults do when they make financial promises." Dad made one last attempt at control. "Fine then. If that is how you want to be, do not bother coming home anymore. You are not welcome here." I looked at him steadily. "That is your choice to make, Dad. But I am not changing my position. My love for this family is not conditional on being your financial safety net." Sarah squeezed my arm. "I am proud of you for standing up for yourself. Someone needed to say this a long time ago." As we left the restaurant together, I could feel the stares of every person who had witnessed our family implosion. But for the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe freely. The weight of always being expected to fix their financial problems had been crushing me without my even realizing it. The drive back to Sarah's campus gave us 2 hours to process what had just happened. She was quiet for the first few miles, then finally said, "I had no idea they were doing that to you. Using your name to make promises, I mean." "It started small," I told her. "Little things here and there. I thought they were just proud of my success and maybe exaggerating a bit when they talked to people. I never realized they were actually committing me to pay for things." Sarah shook her head. "They have been putting pressure on me too, but differently. Always talking about how you would probably help with my graduate school expenses, how successful you are, how families should support each other's education. I thought it was just wishful thinking." That revelation hit me hard. My parents had been using my financial stability as a planning tool for the entire family, making assumptions about my willingness and ability to fund their various needs and dreams. They had created this narrative where my success belonged to all of them, not just to me. The first few weeks after the restaurant incident were strange. Complete radio silence from Mom and Dad. No phone calls, no text messages, no attempts to reach out through Sarah or other family members. Part of me felt guilty about the way everything had exploded so publicly. But a bigger part of me felt relief that I did not have to constantly worry about the next financial emergency they would present me with. I threw myself into work and started seeing a therapist to help process the complicated feelings around family loyalty versus personal boundaries. Dr. Martinez helped me understand that enabling someone financially often prevents them from developing their own coping skills and self-sufficiency. By always bailing them out, I had been inadvertently keeping them dependent rather than truly helping them. After about a month, Mom finally called. I could hear the strain in her voice as she tried to find the right approach. "Your father has been really depressed since that night. He feels like he lost his son over money." "Mom," I said gently but firmly, "this was never about money. This was about respect and honesty in our relationship. You can call me anytime you want to talk or if there is a genuine emergency. But the conversation about money has to be different going forward. She was quiet for a long moment. What do you mean different? I mean you ask me directly instead of telling other people I have already agreed to something. You give me the full truth about the situation instead of presenting it as an emergency when you have already spent the money. And you accept my answer, whatever it is, without trying to manipulate me into changing it. 2 weeks later, Dad called. His voice was gruff, but there was something different in his tone. You have changed, son. I do not know if that is good or bad yet, but you are not the same person who left for college 6 years ago. I hope that is a good thing, Dad. I hope I have learned to stand up for myself while still being a loving son. Maybe, he said slowly. Maybe you have. Gradually, we started rebuilding our relationship on new terms. Family dinners resumed, but the dynamic was completely different. Mom and Dad seemed to understand that they could no longer manipulate me with guilt or public pressure. They still brought up financial concerns sometimes, but now they presented them as genuine questions rather than foregone conclusions. 6 months after that disaster at Romano's, something amazing happened. Dad called to tell me he had found a part-time job doing light construction consulting for a local building company. Mom had gotten a promotion at her store and was working more hours. They were managing their finances independently for the first time in years. We had to figure it out for ourselves, Dad admitted during a phone call. When we knew we could not just assume you would cover our mistakes, we had to get more careful about our spending and more creative about our income. Even more surprisingly, they seemed happier. There was less stress in their voices, less desperation when unexpected expenses came up. They had rediscovered their own capability and self-reliance. Sarah graduated summa cum laude and got accepted into a prestigious graduate program with a full scholarship. She told me later that watching me set boundaries with our parents had inspired her to have honest conversations with them about her own future and what kind of support she actually needed versus what they had been assuming I would provide. That horrible night at the Italian restaurant taught me that love and manipulation cannot coexist in healthy relationships. Real family support flows both ways and respects everyone's autonomy. You can love your parents deeply while still maintaining your right to make your own financial decisions. Now, when I help my family, it comes from a place of genuine choice rather than obligation or guilt. I still contribute to genuine emergencies, but I also ask questions and verify information. I offer advice and emotional support freely, but financial support comes with clear communication and mutual respect. Looking back, that public humiliation was actually the most liberating experience of my adult life. It forced a conversation that was years overdue and established boundaries that have made all our relationships healthier and more honest. Sometimes the most embarrassing moments become the most important turning points in our lives. What about you? Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members who were taking advantage of your success? Have your parents ever put you in an impossible position where saying no made you feel guilty, but saying yes felt wrong? Share your experiences in the comments, because I know I am not the only one who has struggled with these family dynamics. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real stories about navigating complicated family relationships. Share this video with anyone who might be dealing with similar pressure from family members who do not respect their boundaries. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember that standing up for yourself does not make you selfish. It makes you strong enough to love your family in healthier ways. Take care of yourselves and each other.